And so this was a great education for you. You came home and within a couple of years had put together financing to do your first feature.
Not within a couple of years, right away. I came home to become a member of the DGA, and through a long and boring story, I couldn't become a member of the DGA, and I was so angry. I said, I'll make my own fucking movie. And at that time, I'd made some money, about $31,000, and I used all my money and other people's family and people invested. So we made Schlock, and it was very appropriately named. And what was interesting about that experience was I was very savvy about production. I knew everything about shooting a movie, but I learned as a director much more in the cutting room of Schlock than I learned shooting it.
How so?
About coverage, about, movies, motion
what you need to
make a scene, what I should have shot.
But what is your process? How do you start? Do you start breaking down the script with location ideas or casting thoughts?
Oh, Christ, I don't know. I don't know. There is a motion picture production. It's only 100 years old, so it's evolved now that when a film crew is set up, a movie will get made. It's like a juggernaut. It pulls out of the station and it's gonna get there.
And then it goes downhill.
Well, it's still, the mechanism's in place. The point is someone in control of it. When you watch a film by someone like Hitchcock or Kubrick, there's a guy in control of it. Other guys like Siegel and sometimes John Huston, you don't know, you're not aware of it. It's there very strongly, but it's not as upfront. Movies are fascinating, and you really can't judge someone's talent until they've made a bunch of movies.
And then you have to judge them by their best work.
Always, you have to judge them by their best work, and you never know the circumstances. You never know what was the real problem there. Sometimes you'll see a movie and it'll be so stupid that you just think, didn't anyone watch dailies?
Or read the script.
Well, how often have you worked with actors who haven't?
More than I'd like to say.
Yeah, people don't believe that. So often an actor will come to the floor and have no idea what we're shooting. It's really like, hello, we're paying you all this money.
Well, what about in the world of horror? Do you find it harder to cast a horror film because maybe there's less respect for that genre?
There's certainly less respect. That's another thing it has in common with comedy. They don't get respect. They're the Rodney Dangerfield of genre, in terms of even Westerns get critical respect. Right. But horror films and comedies, in the history, like the Oscars, I think there's been 2 horror films to win Oscars, right? The Exorcist and
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
But 1 comedy, which is Annie Hall. It's fascinating. And they're among the most difficult things to pull off. No one understands that.
And why do you think they're so tough to pull off?
Because there's so few really good ones.
Yeah.
They're exploitation. From the earliest days, horror's been a staple of exploitation. And they all come, you have right now, it's vampires and werewolves all of a sudden because of that Mormon, what's her name? The one who wrote Twilight. Yeah. They come in cycles. Like every, if you look, again, 100 years, look over the past 100 years, you'll see that in the 20s, you had big-budget horror films, Phantom of the Opera, Nosferatu. You had a bunch of big budget, and then not. And then you had big Westerns. Then come the 30s, again, big-budget horror films, right? And big horror films.
All those Universal movies were their A pictures, Frankenstein,
Dracula. For a while.
Yeah.
But by the 40s, they were B pictures.
Yeah.
And
the more monsters in it, the better. The House of Frankenstein.
Abbott Costello brought the monsters back.
Yeah, 1947. Well, they kind of put the nail in the coffin in 19. Yeah.
Did you coin that?
Absolutely.
Is that like me on the slab?
But they really did kind of stop horror movies dead once they became.
I don't think so because
comedic.
You got the giant I disagree.
Well, that started several years later in the 50s.
The atomic bomb. Yeah. You started having giant monsters,
But it was a new kind. It was the nuclear paranoia era monsters of the nuclear beasts.
Yes and no. You still had, I was a teenage Frankenstein, I was a teenage werewolf.
Yeah.
You did have all the giant spiders and all that stuff. But my point is that there's always, even MGM, a company that very rarely made fantasy or horror, made Forbidden Planet as an A picture in the 50s, big budget science fiction movie. Every decade sees it come up and go away, come up and go away. The only thing really new, and it is new, is every hugely successful horror film in history had always been based on a book. Jaws was a book. The Exorcist was a book. Rosemary's Baby was a book. I mean, these big, successful, even all the Stephen King ones, you know, they're based on books, which gives it sort of a literary patina. It's like, it's not really shit. It's in a book, you know? And that was finally broken with Alien. It was the first one.
The original.
The original Alien, which is not, I mean, everyone calls it science fiction. It's not. It's, you know, it's
a monster
It's
movie.
an old dark house movie with a monster on the loose. Wonderful movie, but most of them have been based on books.
A lot of horror, though, turned to the independent film world, to people like John Carpenter with Halloween.
But no, again, only because of exploitation.
Right.
That's always been true. They've always made Nabonga. They've always made those independent. When you make exploitation films, it just means you have something to exploit.
Right.
And it's usually sex or violence or gore or it's a monster. So exploitation films always lent themselves to horror. So you always had independents making exploit, always, you know. And what was new was you had gifted people,
right?
You know. And that's the big influence of Spielberg and Lucas, is now B pictures are made with A budgets.
Right.
Now the exploitation films are big Hollywood product.
Well, you first achieved success and fame through doing comedy. American Werewolf not only changed the course a little bit there, but also introduced you to Michael Jackson and Thriller. And Thriller really had an impact upon your life. You were always musically oriented with your films, but suddenly you were the director of the world's largest music video.
You know, that and $2.60 will get you a latte at Starbucks. No, Thriller was an opportunity. That just came out of the blue. That was Michael Jackson loved American Werewolf in London, and he was fascinated by the Metamorphosis, by Rick Baker's work of the transformation. He's clearly someone who did a lot of work on himself. And he called me out of the blue and said, you know, I want to do that. Can I turn into a monster? And so I was terribly excited. He was a big star. Thriller was already the biggest selling album of all time before we made the video. And it was an opportunity to do a dance number correctly. Because I'd made the Blues Brothers, and in the Blues Brothers, because John and Danny were not real dancers.
No full frame shots. Yeah.
Well, there were. I just used a lot of amateurs behind them. I used a lot of, there's only one scene with professional dancers in it. And I thought, gee, I wish I could have shot a musical number like for real. So Michael was such an extraordinary performer. I thought, ooh, an opportunity to make a musical number. Then I wanted to exploit Michael's celebrity. You know, he just wanted to make a rock video. And I thought, I don't want to, you know, make a, I mean, rock videos, what they're called, music videos, are commercials to sell records. And I thought, well, yeah. However, because he was such a big star, I thought, let's make a short. It's a two-reeler. It's the same length as a Three Stooges short. You know, I wanted to bring shorts, theatrical shorts back. And I knew because of Michael's enormous celebrity, I could. And it was successful. I mean, Disney picked it up for distribution. It played with Fantasia. But the record company kind of sabotaged me because they weren't wrong. They saw the value of getting it on TV. And it spiraled and became this phenomenon. But Michael, did you see This Is It?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I just saw it. I just got the screener. It's not a great film, but boy, you know, he was so great.
It's a wonderful experience, that movie.
I loved, well, okay, it was fascinating for me because just watching Mike, I mean, he never does a full performance in it. He's always holding back.
Right, yeah.
He's always
you can
holding
see
back.
him holding back, and he's
because it's
still
rehearsals.
amazing.
He's amazing. He moved. He was a great dancer and a great performer. I always feel bad for people. You know, Michael. I always felt bad for people who never saw him perform live, because that was extraordinary.
Well, a revelation for me was coming to the set of Thriller when you were shooting the scene, the long tracking shot where he's
That's
talking
one shot,
to Lola Ray, and it goes on. And Michael was very quiet and reserved, and yes, John, and then action, and bang, he's this bigger than life, just spectacular.
Well, Rick Baker had the great experience where brought Mike to his little studio then to get his molds made. So Michael's very quiet, he's super thin. You could put your arm through him, you know, and very soft-spoken and getting the mold made and everything, and like that. And he goes home, and that night, he had a performance. We had to finish by 4 because he had to go to be on the Motown 25th anniversary thing.
Right.
So we watched TV that night. And that's when he did the extraordinary.
Oh, the moonwalk.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And Rick called me up saying, is that the same guy? He couldn't believe it, because he was just such a powerful performer.
Well, that was such a groundbreaking video.
Well, wait a moment. You tell your audience your part and your wife's part in that video.
Yes, my wife Cynthia and I are both zombies in Thriller, thanks to Mr.
You know
Landis.
what? He's the only zombie that actually looks like himself.
That's right.
Rick Baker's the Rick Baker.
Yeah.
Rick Baker doesn't look like himself, but Mick, he's the grumpy zombie.
I'm the grumpy zombie. This is me.
This is the real reason why Thriller was successful.
That's
Mick
right.
Garris.
Well, it was great to meet him on that, and then years ago working with him and realizing what a sense of humor that he had.
Michael was insane. I mean, come on. Yes, he had a wonderful sense of humor.
But he was a lot of fun.
He could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes. He also could be a lot of work. But, he
It's hard to get him to the set sometimes.
He was mad, but it's very difficult to remain sane in those circumstances, I think. But I enjoyed him. I enjoyed working with him, and I was fond of him, and I'm like everyone else. I was very shocked by his death. Not surprised, but shocked by his death.
Yeah.